extra for this. Yeah. It's a little cold. That road you showed. Yeah, did you ever? Yeah. Hard to use. Nobody knows your license. Yeah. I think veteran wards are one of those railroads used to us. Well, I mean. Yeah. Oh, you're probably one of them. Liquor and everybody else. Or you move to the margins. No, yeah, we may not have we sit there with our. That'd be early. Early. Early, being on time, I could see you.
That G manifest means never. And
Well, I think you I'm not gonna lie. I can.
Thank you, Jared. Nice to meet you. Yeah, it's
If you're talking.
What are you doing? I want to get quiet. Who are you? I'm get quiet. I'm gonna keep up. Lots of writing errors. So what's waiting to know we'll see.
All now with 12.
Never before.
Yes.
Great. Yes, yes, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Yes. And Jimmy, give me a minute. Nice. Sorry. Yes.
Oh, it's not. It's there. Definitely.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. What?
Yes.
All right, well, let's gavel us in. Hey, good evening, everybody. What is this, second? meeting so far? Third. So we have a couple of remote, or looks like one remote participation right now. Commissioner Tanisha Allen, Stafford County has asked to participate remotely in this meeting. Commissioner Allen, can you state the reason for your participation and your location?
Thank you. I'm located in Virginia, and the reason for my remote process is my mom just had surgery today, and so I'm just staying with her to make sure that she's okay in her post-surgical recovery.
All right, can I get a motion? Motion to approve. Second. We have a motion, Commissioner Young, second, Commissioner Moore. Do we just do it all in favor? No, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? The ayes have it. Welcome, Commissioner Allen. Perry, if you could give us a safety test.
Okay, good evening, everybody. As we adjust our clocks for daylight savings time, it's often the perfect time to check and maintain smoke alarms. Some safety tips for those, replace batteries twice a year unless using a 10-year lithium battery. Install smoke alarms on every level of your home, including a basement. Replace the entire smoke alarm unit every 10 years or according to the manufacturer's instructions. Never disable a smoke alarm while cooking. It can be a deadly mistake. There's audible alarms that are available for visually impaired individuals, and then the smoke alarms that have a vibrating pad or flashing light for anybody who may have hearing.
All right, thank you, sir. If we could all rise to the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States.
The United States of America.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all. Then we go to the other room.
Angry,
Here.
Andre Bailey, Kenny Cody.
Here.
Margaret Brentland here, Tom Gordy, Bob Weir, Deshandra Jefferson, Karen Mills, Idris O'Connor, Kim Short, Usually Vega, Tanisha Allen,
Here.
R. Pamela Young. Present. Meg Bunky, Daryl English, Ralph Smith, Sonia Vasquez Luna. Daryl Moore,
Here.
Alana Vincent, Janet Holmes, here, Will McIntosh, Deborah Frazier, here, Lori Hayes, Jacob Lane, Kevin Marshall, Tiffany Robinson, Todd Horsley.
Here.
Rosa Henson Jr., Josh Thomas, Jeremy McTighe.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Can I get an approval for the agenda?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion, and a second, right? A motion, Commissioner Bodie, second, Commissioner Ralph Smith. I guess we'll leave discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. You have one abstention?
I presume, Mr. Chair, that go through riders and increases in the service level impacts. Don't see it necessarily in the agenda. Okay. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. That motion passes. Did we? Yes, okay. Can I get a full vote for the minutes? Okay, we're gonna give the motion to Commissioner Moore. And we'll give the second, that was, okay, Commissioner Bodie, second. Any discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
I oppose. Is it the 2024 meeting minutes?
Yes, would you like to abstain from that?
Abstaining from-
Okay, we have one abstention, any other abstentions? And I have a Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
yes.
February 2025.
2025, the one that says meeting minutes, I'm looking for it on the, and then says the meeting minutes 2024.
This one
That's the one I
says,
want to abstain.
this one is you said you're.
Okay, that one, oh, yes. Okay, on that one.
Scratch the abstention you would rather, so that's 9, and yes,
That's a 9 for the 2025, and 2024.
okay,
But it's here.
all right,
That's why I
And we
like
got
to
the
say
I
it
think-
so I can see.
yes. Commissioner Allen, I think it was a yes from you?
Yes, that's an aye.
Okay, thank you so much. That motion passes. And now, let's start with VRE update.
Thank you, Chair. Got a couple things tonight. First, just let me update you. You do have the CEO report in your packet and information items and other things regarding the VRE operations board meeting in February. Just a little bit about ridership, on-time performance. On-time performance first. First, we did see a nice uptick in January, above 85%. We've fallen just a little bit below 85%. February, some of those, we still experience that tremendous amount of congestion out there, but some of that is also weather related over the last. But specifically from a ridership standpoint, comparing February to January, and February had one fewer service day for us. We were up 36% in February over January. And then, of course, a lot of that ridership came right at the end of the month of February in the last month. Similar to other providers in the region, we just dealt with a lot of weather related issues in January. I will say the first 3 days of March, it's our ridership is even outpacing what we saw in the last couple of weeks of February. So again, similar to others in the region, we're seeing a similar uptick. So we do have an action item here for you, just kind of a extended summary, if you will. So I'll conclude my report there in case anybody has any questions, and we'll jump right into that.
Thank you, sir. Any questions so far? Hearing none. We can get right into.
We're going to jump right into it. So what we're here to in your packet 6.2, seek an authorization for the VRE CEO to execute a Manassas Line funding agreement with the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. This is a topic that we've briefed you on over the months. We did update in January. The VRE Operations Board asked them for a recommendation, and they unanimously recommended funding agreement to the commissions. But just real quick, just wanted to remind folks while we're here, we talked about before, is in order to as it relates to VRE service expansion in the future, and frankly, as it relates to VRE reliability and to some degree congestion relief, we had been working with VPRA on a funding commitment, as they had previously, as you recall back in September, had purchased the Manassas line from Norfolk Southern. And of course, this what we're presenting to you tonight is as part of that commitment to contribute to that transaction. Just as a, again, an overview, of course, the benefits for VRE is it gives us essentially perpetual access to the Manassas line. As you recall, we have always been under these 5-year agreements, or in some cases 5 years plus a 5-year option. So this basically extends that out into the future. This particular deal for us, at least with VPRA, is that it does give us control over our stations, schedule flexibility as we implement. I provided this slide as just a kind of a backdrop. These are things that we're updating our system plan and vision for VRE. As you can see, not only providing 1-seat stops for the region, but we do a lot of connections out there with existing providers, and I think that slide does a pretty good job of showing us the power and what we do in the corridors of the areas that we operate in. The other key point of this transaction would give us essentially have us construct a midday storage facility at the Seminary Yard location. We'll get into that in just a little bit. Just want to put that a little bit into context in that we have been over the years working to stand up a midday storage facility primarily in the DC area. And albeit we had a solution, it was not preferred. And then when this transaction come up, of course, the location for this midday storage facility is much more preferred for us. So just a couple of highlights there. I don't want to belabor that. If you have any questions, we can go through that. But I wanted to have Mark Schofield, our CFO, come up, and he'll give you again some highlights of the actual funding agreement, sort of where we had moving forward as it relates to this transaction. So, Mark.
Thank you, Rich. Good evening, Chair and Commission members. If you think back a couple of years ago to when VPRA was acquiring property in the CSX rail corridor, we came to an agreement there to contribute bond proceeds and also cash towards that purchase. This is a similar kind of arrangement, again, because we are a major beneficiary of VPRA making this transaction. But I think it's honestly a much better transaction this time because VRE is going to be getting property interest for running this transaction. So those property interests are there in the green on the chart. So this agreement is kind of an umbrella agreement. It commits VRE to $155 million over a 5-year period. And at the end of this, we will have ownership of the Seminary Yard in Alexandria, ownership of the Broad Run corridor, which is adjacent to the NS main line leading into our Broad Run Yard. We will have permanent easements over our station platforms on the Manassas line, which are in the right of way. And then we will have a permanent commuter rail operating easement across the Manassas line. Just for your help in visualizing things here, this is the blue is the VRE Manassas line. You can see Alexandria there on the right, and then where our two lines split. The red line is the red line going down in the I-95 corridor. That's Seminary Yard, our new midday storage that Rich mentioned is going to be there, sort of right in between the two lines. Then our stations leading out to the west, and then out to Broad Run, and right there. Kind of at the far left is where the Broad Run, the third track will be. As I mentioned, this agreement is kind of an umbrella. It outlines the anticipated ways that we're going to make good on our commitment, but it doesn't say exactly how we're going to do it. It just gives sort of guidance on what we might use. We already have been engaged in a number of discussions with the FTA using our existing and future formula money to support this transaction. We've been working with them on making sure the property acquisitions clear all the NEPA clearances, the projects are on the tip and stiff, all those things that you got to do to get them into the grants. The relationship with FTA on this has been very, very good. I feel very positive on this. So our FY26 budget was just approved months ago. reprograms 26 million of our mural operating and capital money towards making the additional contribution to the PRA that is contemplated under this agreement. After that, we anticipate using the FTA money to make most of the rest of the contributions. We do have a little bit more local money that we do have to secure. We probably will be looking at the outs of the Delta program, try to apply to that to get the rest of the world. So that we have to answer.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Okay, you got, well, oh, all right, Commissioner Allen, any questions?
No, Chairman, no, Chairman, no questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Hearing that, so I'll need a motion for approval for 6.2. I move to approve action item 6.2. Second. All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Smith, second Commissioner York. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? You can say around the board. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the ayes have it. Up, Commissioner Allen. Keep forgetting my voice in this time.
I said aye, I'm sorry. Aye.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you very much, sir. Oh, are we good?
I just remind you of the other information that's in your packet stuff. If not now, if anybody has any questions.
And I think I have one here.
Feel free to contact me.
Okay, I have one. I think I got a question or comment, Commissioner Franklin.
Yeah, we can talk about it offline, but the fourth track impact, I know that's an information item. But I also know that's one of the potentials for how we may fund the 155 million. So just wanted to see what the impact of that would be on the funding improvement.
The LaFont Station and Fort Track. Specifically, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, sure. We did originally have some CROC money programmed towards that LaFont project. Because that project has been pushed a little bit out into the future, we wanted to use that money now, so we decided to repurpose that towards the property acquisition and be able to backfill the FTA or the LaFont project, we think, with FTA.
Okay, so we can still move forward with this.
Correct.
Thank you. And yes, Commissioner Young.
This is not specific to this particular project, but for any project that you currently have in the pipeline and funding appropriate to it, is there a way, or are we holding that money in a way that it's not gonna increase when you start that project? Is there some risk holding on to it and pushing it out and that we haven't come back? Sorry, with the sign of time and everything, are we making sure that these projects are covered and that when you start, it's not effectively as of what we're going right now?
And speaking specifically for the LaFont Station project, and so just number one, so that project was pushed out mainly for scheduling purposes because there's if you recall back at the February meeting, we showed you all, and it's in your information package as well. There's a lot of stuff going on there, so we had to.
And the
projects had to put in tag and stuff like that.
And saying, hey, we will need.
Well, but specifically for the LaFont Station and Fort Track project, it is at the, we're pushing to get that project right at the 30% design phase. We do show an unfunded balance in our CIP on that project, just intentionally, to be honest with you, because we want to get it to 60%. So we understand exactly what those costs are for that project. And then we'll, as we do with other projects, we'll go fill that up. So I don't want to mislead you there. It does show unfunded, but it's intentional. We just want to go one more time to get that project.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And let me just ask, per the memo that we received from the VRE Operation Board Chair, Sarah Bagley, does any commissioner want to discuss the VRE General Counsel memo? Any discussion on that? Okay, there's none. Thank you, sir.
Thank you
For your presentation.
Everybody stay safe.
All right, you too. Mr. Diego, public comments.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there were 2 comments submitted before today's 5 PM deadline. And those comments and responses are printed at everyone's seat.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Good, looks like we have no discussion, no consent agenda. Let us see. Oh, no, I'm sorry, we did. 8.2, 8.3, acceptance. Well, we have 2 items on the consent agenda, and I get a motion? So we had a motion, Commissioner McBride. Second. We have a second, Commissioner Frazier. All right. And this is where it's going to. And so, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Allen. Any abstentions? Hearing none, the ayes have it. Thank you very much. Dr. Snyder, the floor is yours.
Yes, so first of all, Holly, would you join us? So, Holly was planning on retiring in June, but she got the itch. I guess all the hirings up in DC really just said, let's get that started. So she came in last week and said, I'm gonna retire at the end of the month. So she's leaving us at the end of this month, and many people know her throughout the community. She's very, very active, involved, the chamber, as a member of the Chamber of Commerce Board with Prince William. Joined us on June 1st, 2010 as a ride share specialist. Where were you June 1st, 2010? Right here. I was still in Boise, Idaho, right before my birthday, right before our birthday. But she came in as a ride share specialist, promoted to her current role as manager of transportation and management. And after like 15 years of service, she retired to spend more time with her family and her interests of food, traveling, gardening, and Pokemon Go. In 2022, she received the ACT, the Association for Commuter Transportation Presidents. It's very prestigious. Held multiple positions with ACT nationally and the local Chesapeake chapter, and her work has upheld the association's mission: create an efficient, multimodal transportation system. As mentioned, serves on the board of directors with not just the chamber, but also Keep Prince William Beautiful. She has co-led every single class of our mentoring program and has helped build the future for transit professionals. She has been for many years the face of OmniRide, joining me at events inside and out. Daytime, 3 a.m. We've been at ribbon cuttings, we've been at bus service launches, freezing cold, pouring rain, snow, sun, and always has a wonderful smile and a fantastic disposition. And every time I go anywhere in the county, everyone asks me one important question: where's Holly? Right? So everyone knows, and truly be missed within the organization. We miss her, we wish her nothing but happiness, and we will miss her. Thank you. Certificate, are we doing that on the 27th? But we still wanted to recognize her with the commission and get a picture with supervisor. Yeah. So Christine's already got the camera ready. So let's step over to the other side.
You getting them out? Yes.
Yes. Get down a little bit. No, too far for her. Or no.
That's so cool.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, there we go. That's what we're talking about. There we go.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're the best.
I'll see you soon then.
Yes, you will.
Like, maybe tomorrow. Okay, service and ridership update. So, inside your packet, you have our ridership through January. Reminder, we have a ridership dashboard. So if you take a look at the ridership dashboard, we are continuing to kill it in technical terms, which is fantastic. A great example, we have 200,000 more passengers right now through January than we had 2 years ago. So I mean, that is fantastic news. Unofficial February commuter ridership, everything that Rich described in terms of the patterns we saw the tail end in February, the start of March, same exact thing, but we were already performing fantastically prior to. So for us, it's just been more and more success. So unofficial commuter bus ridership increased almost 30% from January to February. And that is despite 2 lost days due to snow. Both months had weather impacts, but we saw a significant increase in express ridership. Unprecedented increase of this magnitude being felt by everybody in the region. The most recent non-pandemic related months we saw with this kind of a surge was going from like in January to February. Was if you think back to 2018 when we had the long government shutdown. But even then, we still had about 80% of our ridership because everyone was still deemed essential. They just weren't getting paid. So that was one of the distinctions. The 3 southern commuter routes that we started in December 2023, so about 14 months ago, experienced their highest monthly total yet, a combined 11,000 riders. That's fantastic. Route 611, 612, and 622 from the University commuter lot, combined AM and PM are clocking over 1,700 passengers per day. So just mathematically, that parking lot out there has around 2,500 spaces. I was out there last week at around 2 o'clock, and there's a lot of construction parking there, but I'd say that lot is about 80% full. And again, there's a lot of the data center construction occurring, but it's still a parking lot. So there's people that are carpooling to get there, etc. We're working with VDOT, Prince William Transportation, and Prince William Police. There's actually competing needs for parking in lots, including illegal parking. So we already have illegal parking at the university lot. That's how you know you're winning. So even yesterday, we had a Sudley Road corridor meeting, and there were discussions and the police officers talking about the illegal parking. So it's actually trickling into Prince William Police and their response. Front Royal ridership recently had about 30 passenger boardings and over 15 more. So we're seeing the ridership growing in those 2 brand new areas we only had services. So again, growth. Horton Road 234 commuter lots also experiencing growth. And the Absco garage is being promoted by our customer service staff heavily. And we're seeing a lot more growth there as well as relief out to commuters. We did notice an appreciable increase in ridership on that Route 563, which is Pentagon to Navy Yard that does serve in the Absco garage. We are evaluating overcrowding. As you can see, here's a lovely picture from yesterday at 4:28:49. However, it's a bit challenging because we don't know which route when is going to have the overcrowding. Right now, it's actually starting to hit every route. We just don't know which exact trips at which times. So evaluating how to respond is really tricky. So a couple of different factors. Again, we don't know which days, which times. We also don't know if we start adding stuff in. It takes us a while to get there. So we're going to be adding some trips from Manassas into Washington, D.C., as well as Lake Ridge. Those are in the pipeline for our April service launch. Part of it was we had to wait for the administration to respond, but they're also firing people. So we'll see what's going to occur, right? One hand give it, one hand take it away. So we're working through that process, but there's also some revenue realities. And I'd like to have a responsibility to be very clear about this. Our service reductions over the past 4 years in the pandemic has been to preserve the motor fuel tax. So what we did is we preserved the motor fuel tax and we reduced services that Prince William County was paying for and shifted our customers over to services that Commuter Choice was paying for, CTD, state grant programs, thank you, DRPT. So the Stafford services we're talking about, the Spotsylvania services we're talking about, the Gainesville to Haymarket, or the Haymarket Gainesville to Rosslyn. Let's see, we've got University of Pentagon, trips from University to DC. All of those services are grant funded. So what we've been doing is we've been trimming our commuter routes back and putting our customers on the state funded services. So now when the ridership all comes back, all the revenue goes to the state. So the state is now the recipient and the beneficiary of these increased trips. So there's not that much new money flowing into our coffers as a result of this. So for example, even with all the increases that have occurred, we are exact on target within 1% to the close of December. Through our financial close, we are within 1% of our budget target for local commuter routes. So perfect, that's great. But we're supposed to have seen a lot more because on those exact same routes for the state funded service are up by 7%. So you can then look forward to say, well, okay, what might we see in this next 6 months? very similar patterns, that we're projecting that we may see somewhat of an increase on the local routes, but we're going to see a much higher proportion going to state funded routes. So what this translates into is, even though we are seeing a lot more ridership, we already have a lot of these customers were riding Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday already. So now they're just filling in Mondays and Fridays. So they're not filling in a lot more during the middle of the week, they're filling the other trips. But the higher ridership does not translate into more revenue to operate more trips. On Dale City, it does not help out with the 234 lot, it does not help out with Corner Road. It's fantastic in that we're able to then take, because we're saving grant funded route, right? We can then take those dollars and put in more trips from Gainesville to Pentagon, but there's no money to add in more trips from Lake City. So we are really in a scenario where I think that we got 4 emails today from customers out of Lake Ridge asking for more trips, more frequency. And we do not have the resource. We'll be able to add in a little bit more overtime for drivers, not overtime per se, but just adding in a little more frequency in the afternoon, a buffer trip. So maybe staging a vehicle in there to figure out, is it this trip out of the Pentagon, or is it the one before, the one after that really has the overcrowding? But we can't add it to the schedule 5 days a week. We'll be able to add it into, service planning is looking at it, we can put it in there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But we can't afford it to be in the schedule 5 days a week. And we can't operate that trip over and over and over, because that operator has a run. They're going to come in and they need to have their 40-hour guarantee. So it's not just as easy as plug a bus in for a couple hours and make it work. We can afford some of those things on a limited basis, but our reality is that we should have the equivalency of about $34 million coming in out of the motor fuel tax. If you were to adjust it for inflation, for what it was bringing in pre-pandemic, adjusted for inflation with the market growth, we should be bringing around 34. It's projected to bring around 17. And the assumption was, well, with everyone returning to work, you'll start to see this major growth. Even December actually came in under projections. So we did not have a strong December, despite having pretty weather. So we're going to be watching, paying close attention, but really under no circumstance will the return to work allow us to operate more services at any significant level. It's not going to close the motor fuels gap, and it's not going to allow us to offer any meaningful level of services to customers. It does give us financial stability from the standpoint of we don't have to worry about some of the concerns we had last year. We're able to meet budget. We don't have to worry about revenue losses for a couple of years. So, we would project and hope workers would come back, and then they wouldn't. So we lower the fare estimates again. We don't have that concern. But right now, we have no way to meet the demands of the residents who are asking us to grow our services until there's some revenue source different than what we have. We're just going to be the status quo. That's where we are. Unofficial February local ridership increased 20% January to February. Similar reasons as bus snow. Top 3 routes continue to be on the local service, Dale City, Dumfries, and Route 1 corridor. One trend to note is our Metro Express routes have become ridership machines. And they're actually stealing ridership from our local routes because of the restructure that we did. It's really serving some neat corridors. And so one of the things we're going to be going back and is looking at is, how do we classify some of that ridership? It's making it look like our local routes aren't performing that well when they are. It's just those routes are serving the Ashton's board out of Manassas Small. That used to be served as a local route. Now we're using our Metro Express route to do that. So it's moving the ridership from one type route to another. And the other one is does the same thing through Woodbridge. As it leaves Potomac Mills and heads up through Woodbridge, that ridership is just migrated from the existing route over that. So we're going to be taking a look at that. They're doing fantastic and really, really great ridership local service. We'll be receiving 2 awards on March 13th from the Prince William Green Business Council. Top Green and Innovative Project for implementation of electric vehicles on our paratransit microtransit service. So we're very excited about that, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, before we move on service level adjustments impacts, what I'm hearing you saying is, despite record-breaking ridership increases, there'll be minimal impacts to new services.
Well, for some routes there, we'll be able to add more on, for example. We're adding more on Gainesville to Pentagon. We're adding more with the grant funded services, because what's happening is the fares are coming in. They're then allowing us to. Well, let's put it this way, if the grant's funded 100% by the state, then we collect those revenues. We credit the state grant, which then leaves more money in the coffer to be expended. But then as the bus is full, we now have more money in the bucket to then add more trips. So then we can add that resource in.
Okay, so, look, Mr. Chair, as a follow-up to that, right now, my sense is riders are making the decision of the new routes and new train based on. So my sense is you have a window over the next 3 weeks. To like capture then in a new community behavior, or else they revert to whatever they're used to, or whatever. New alternative reality. How, what is your recommendation to this board? Or others, state on how do you capture that new opportunity for people to establish new behaviors? Because I've also heard just like these emails, standing room only, lots of different complaints, ridership, misalignment or route misalignments, other things that there's a lot more pressures that are going on. And certainly anybody who's also doing this for Drive 95 sees over the last 3 weeks the significant impacts to every Virginia.
So we're adding more trips on those grant funded routes. There's no question about that. We're doing that. We're adding more into the schedule for April. So it takes some time to just build that up and build that in. Our challenge is because quite frankly, we've shoved all of our customers onto those state funded routes. Now they're all riding state funded routes. So when the ridership grows and hits those routes, there's not enough volume of service to then bolster the local routes, because we've trimmed them back so much. There's not enough ridership volume to then turn around and say, okay, that's enough order of magnitude to self-pay for more trips. And that's what it comes down to. The ridership is not enough to pay for more service by itself.
Local or longer distance. So you're saying transfer local is not enough.
The localized funding.
So trips for funding.
Funding.
Okay. So you said local, but not necessarily.
Sorry, funding. Yes. It's all about money.
Okay. We should, as a collective team, do a lot of follow pretty quickly. On this to figure out what contingent funds or anything else. I'm a little locked up at the moment, but it's really important. I think this one, Mr. Chairman, the one thing we can do is to try to respond as quickly as we can to new impacts to commuter routes and to federal workers and rest of it. So it's change that hasn't happened in about 20 years to the full impact of the change of workforce.
To that point, it was a great report. Thank you for going through that with us, Dr. Schneider. But right now, I'm sort of just that in this meeting. I didn't see anything about it on this in the meeting materials, and frankly, we have colleagues in all our jurisdictions, I think, would benefit from this information, because I'll tell you, as we talk through our budgets, we have some colleagues who are assuming, and I'm not saying good, bad, or ugly, but they're assuming what the original assumption is, which is, oh, there's more riders, even if they're 2 additional days. That's going to generate a lot more funds for basically PRTC to pay for itself and for new trips to pay for themselves, including in the 95 quarter. So it's something that I feel like somehow needs to be communicated officially from PRTC to our colleagues, because there are colleagues that sit on this that aren't in this room right now that need to hear that message.
I guess the question boils down to what needs to happen in order for us to provide more trips. I think that's the bottom line question we're looking for, or answer we're looking for. What will trigger?
I'll just be honest. I've sat in this room for 5 years or 4 years talking about the decline of the motor fuel tax. That's it. That's it. We collect the same amount of money in the motor fuels tax right now that we did in 2019. And this organization costs more than it did in 2019, and that's it. And here's the interesting thing, the reason we collect as much as we do is because it's indexed to inflation. If the General Assembly hadn't gone through and actually indexed it to inflation, I don't know what, like, we'd be just, there'd be nothing there. And that was after, thank goodness, they took the step of actually putting a floor on it. At one point in time, there was no floor. So if you go back to, I mean, when I walked through the doors here in 2017, there was a fiscal crisis tied to motor fuels tax, and the first act we did is we at least had a floor on it so that it couldn't go any lower. So that was the hard, that was hard work all of 2017 to 18. But at least we got a floor put in place so it wasn't bottoming out. So we got that solved. But then we migrated into actually establishing, okay, let's get it indexed to inflation. So 5 years ago, right about now, the General Assembly broke, the pandemic had hit, and then the General Assembly attached it to inflation. But I'm trying to remember the order of operations, it was a 5-cent tax, is that about right? It was a first 5-cent tax attached to inflation, and then that was the first step, and that was it. And then that's about the rise of EV, the pandemic hit, people stopped driving for about 3 or 4 months. We thought, oh no, what's the pattern going to be? And there was an immediate, let's say about 3 or 4 months, then there was a bounce back for motor fuels tax collections, but then they stayed flat. And as the rise of EVs took over, the motor fuels tax just stayed flat. And so we've been giving presentations at every single budget season and every single budget presentation that the motor fuels tax is flat. There's no other revenue replacement. I have no statutory power to establish any other revenue stream. We've told the story locally, we've told the story in the state. The federal government is not going to provide any resources for this. This is where we are, and until there is some other source of revenue, this is what we'll be able to do. And passenger fares are great. They help provide some stability. What we've charged more just to try to keep the doors open and the lights on for some of the routes. Now we actually have some stability and continuity, but most of those riders are now riding state-funded routes and services, not local routes and services. So we're going to be able to do great things for passengers who are riding state services, but that doesn't help passengers who are riding Lake Ridge to Pentagon, who are riding Dale City to Pentagon, 234 to Pentagon, or DC, etc. It's going to be great for passengers on the I-66 corridor, or for Front Royal, or from Gainesville, or Spotsylvania, Stafford, or Fredericksburg, but it will not help the residents of Prince William County who have been riding legacy routes out of Dale City, Woodbridge, Dumfries, Montclair, etc. It's just that's our economic return. Trust me, I wish we had it. I really do. I wish we did.
Feel like I really want to take us down that rabbit hole, because I mean, to the point, I've always seen the well as well dry, like our well is dry, so we are literally discussing funding streams and trying to figure this out for Person County and PRTC. As well, I know how the other jurisdictions are looking at this, but the motor fuels tax hasn't been recently something that's been beneficial for our bus system. So we're out of place, and this discussion is budget season now, so it's going to come up more and more as being discussed, as you heard my colleague Commissioner voting express so much. Yes.
What is the percent? Yeah, ma'am. To that would be the
Elected bodies may do everything.
wondered, is that maybe not this year, but is that a consideration? Is that well, if we're not bringing in enough money to run it effectively, we're gonna have to do something. So what is the solution? I am solution oriented. So we
it is incumbent upon us that we start thinking about what is the next step and what is the solution. And we can't wait a few more years to make this decision.
If I can, say, because we're not waiting, this discussion literally happening right now, so probably the best place is here. And we're having this in the county, and hopefully you're having it in your jurisdiction, because this conversation is happening now. So this budget that we're gonna bring back, and we're gonna bring to PRTC, will be something different, and you may find yourselves fighting for what that looks like. I know people don't like taxes, you know, but there's opportunities and options that are out there that we're exploring in the county right now, but it is a reality. Now, I just want to say this, because we're in a kind of another weird place. COVID was very bad, you know, it really just stopped everything. But what's happening in the federal government right now puts us in a weird position, because these buses move into the city in Person County, in this area that we OmniRide, you know, support, goes that way, and you know, south a little bit, but basically north. And so there's a big movement happening, as you see it with employees, but you got scenarios to play out now. Like if DC is not DC in the next couple of years, and there are no federal jobs there, that's a game changer for this bus system that we have, which brings new ways of thinking. However we think about what we're moving into next, has to be a very good balance of not doing too much, but not doing too little, based on where we're going and what this is gonna look like when the dust settles. Interesting enough. I'm gonna pause there because I know I had some more comments. I heard some rumblings.
Well, I just think, to Commissioner's Pike's point, we have to have, the answer can't be on the bear of my head in sand until the sky falls, right? So my question becomes, can we at least come up with some analysis to say, if I add 1 or 2 routes, it's gonna cost me X? Because it's our responsibility to say, hey, state, local, whomever, be prepared to, in the event we have an increase, or be prepared to answer to your constituents as to why we can't provide additional services. But I think we need to have a dollar amount that says, this is what we need. You got it. If you got it, that's great. You need to be able to use that to take it wherever we need to take it, to say, this is what we're going to need if we want to be able to flex to support the new requirement. And I agree, we don't want to overdo this to the point where all of a sudden there's nothing happening in DC and we now need to shut everything down. So I just think, though, we need to be prepared.
To that point, we do know the exact cost of every trip. So we know what it costs to take each trip per route. So that's why we're able to add in the additional services that we're providing for Lake Ridge as well as Manassas. So those are examples of, because we know that, we're able to put the plug those into service because we are on target for our revenue projection. So because we are on target for example, if we were $100,000 short on local fare collection, you know, when I say local, it's the express routes, really local funding, local pot of money, then we would be able to still be $100,000 short, projected $200,000 for the year. We maybe can't do that trip like that. Instead, we now know we're in a good shape. We can now add these in April because we know we'll have the continuation all the way through summer. If it continues to grow, we can do that analysis on a consistent basis. But we have to have the ridership. Again, we just got our ridership for February this month. January was preliminary data. We just got our first tranche of this. Now we get to see. I don't know if anyone saw that they passed a continuing resolution. Congress was threatening to pass the CR for the federal government for 30 days. We don't know what Congress will do. Will there be a federal government shutdown in mid-March? That'll blow our ridership from March. We don't know what's going to happen with our ridership or if shut down the government down. Last time the government shut down, I think it was 49 days. About right. So we'll see how that plays out. But we'll continue to see what the data is. These crush loads and overcrowding is about 7 or 8 days old for us. So we are working to be responsive. We have had people standing on the bus since August to get home from the Pentagon. Just so that's, everyone understands. We've been had passengers riding home from the Pentagon to Gainesville standing up since August. So this has been a long an issue, but it was, hey, Omni ride, make sure you come in with the fun. That's what we've done. So we follow the funding, the budget guidelines by the county who says this is what our expectations are. And so we work really, really hard.
Yeah, and I know we have to move on. I know Prince William County is looking at a myriad of options towards transportation funding, but I will say, I mean, Dr. Schneider's right. We've said for the past several years, make sure you approach, counties with a budget that you can actually afford, and that we're, quite frankly, Prince William County isn't footing more than, we're always kind of looked at as the savior when it comes to funding. And so making sure that PRTC can start kind of holding their own in a sense, but I said all that to say, it's going to take a multi-jurisdictional approach to make sure that we have effective servicing of OmniRide and PRTC. Prince William County will continue to obviously to put in the lion's share of it, but I think it's also a discussion for other jurisdictions to kind of look at their options for helping to make sure that we can expand routes for OmniRide as well.
Continuing on, they want to mention that our monthly pass usage is exploding. Just from February to March, our monthly pass sales have seen close to a 50% increase in customers registering to use the pass. Why that is so wonderful is because just think about if the government shutdown does happen and people don't ride, they already have their money. When they go on spring break, have their money. When there was a snowstorm in January, haha, we had their money. So, it's a great thing when you already have the revenue, because otherwise it just goes back to the feds when we need the revenue. That's a wonderful thing there. A little more serious, I'm sorry.
Just brief question on that piece before you move on. I know that we push out communications and ads for the monthly pass. I've seen them. How we at all explore the idea of having testimonies from customers as part of that, because what I've seen, especially with things like that, one of the most powerful ways to get more people to do it is to have existing users of it put messages out there for. So have we talked about or looked at that?
We haven't, but we go to the Pentagon fairs and talk there, and we have ambassadors that work in the different offices. So we have testimonials that work that way. But I'll talk to marketing teams here. We'll figure something out. With that. On a more serious note, very serious note, on Tuesday, March 4th, about 3:45, OmniRide coach unit 3005 experienced a flat tire on northbound I-95 while heading back to DC after dropping passengers. Spotsylvania County, when I learned about it, and it was northbound in the general purpose lanes. At least we knew there were no passengers aboard. So the immediate concern was what about our operator? From there was making sure our coach operator was safe. Immediately confirmed that, and we opened up what was essentially our team's war room. Whenever we have something unfolding in real time, we hop on Teams because the communications lag. It's trying to use email, using. So we basically were able to coordinate information response. When I say it was unfolding in real time, we were truly watching it through the cams from the interstate, and even one of our employees could see the smoke from his home. So that's the instance when I say it was unfolding in real time. So really just very, very limited information. Our team, along with the Keolis General Manager, Bill Wingfield, and also Keolis's Region Vice President, Francis Julian, who was happened to be in town, were able to join in to give us some preliminary information to confirm that the operator was indeed safe. They had some preliminary information. It was a tire fire that had, there was a flat tire that had converted into a tire fire, with very, very limited details at the time because the focus was really responding to the fire, working with those on scene. They were then able to perform an investigation. I'll ask Mr. Julian to come up and just give an update of what he learned.
Good afternoon, good evening, Chairman and members of the board. For the record, Francis Jokin, Vice President of Operations for Peerless. Obviously, for us, Peerless safety in our business is number one. Each year, we transport over 3.6 billion passengers worldwide. So we have a lot of policies and procedures in place. First thing we know that we came to find out with the incident, there's still an ongoing investigation. But the first thing we know, and that is always a good thing, it was not a, it was not because of a lack of maintenance or structures in our maintenance. All the maintenance records show that the vehicle was checked. In fact, it was checked, that tire had a failure, it was checked the prior week. It was in good working condition. We had a state inspection the week prior. We have very hard procedures on what to do and what not to do when there's an incident. Our investigation right now is pointing to the fact that there was a breakdown in those procedures. So basically a human error that occurred. We're at this moment conducting revisiting those procedures to make sure that we're putting some measures in place so incidents like these do not happen. And we're conducting safety and training sessions next week for all the employees. So with that important question, unfortunately, we do hundreds of millions of trips a year. These incidents unfortunately do happen. We do not want them to happen, but we take them seriously when they do. It's an opportunity, I hate to say it, but it's an opportunity for us to help us prevent the next incident.
Welcome to see it. Very good.
So, sure. Okay. Here that there'll be a follow-up report. That's what I do.
Yes, you did say, I heard that. So follow-up report. But you said that you did.
There's still an ongoing investigation, so with the employees, so we'll have the final, we can actually come back and obviously we'll give all of that names.
When did you intend to complete the investigation?
We're hopeful by that month. 95% will be completed by Monday. We have a piece of equipment that we had to send out of state that we were able to recuperate to complete the last 5%, but at 95% will be completed Monday.
Then, we have a couple other brief updates. Ms. Lauren Gilbert from Advanced Strategies is here. Here's our representation or the obvious in Richmond. You met her on a Zoom call back in January. Something up, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Schneider. Hello, everyone. I'm Lauren Gilbert, Advanced Strategies. I'm your lobbyist on the ground in Richmond. Thank you for forgiving my cough drops and my water bottle. I'm sure I'm not the only early allergy season sufferer in the room. So this year, the General Assembly met for a short session. There was not a full budget, so that means the General Assembly meets for only 45 days, and the action taken on the budget is to amend the current budget. So in a relatively short session, we have a limited number of bills that each member can submit. Things move fairly quickly. I'm sure you also know we lost the first 3 days of its session in person due to water outages in Richmond, so that condensed our 45 days even further. But the body got everything done, so we're very happy with that. In terms of budget amendments this year, there was a surplus. However, it was communicated to everyone very clearly, starting even as early as even before November of last year, that any request should really be focused on one-time spending only and not towards continued spending costs. The General Assembly is anticipating a slowdown or even a downturn in Virginia's economy based on what we're seeing in the federal government. And so again, it was communicated very clearly, any budget request should be really focused on one-time spending only for the current surplus we have. couple of other things to keep in mind when you're thinking about session this year. This is a re-election year for all House members. There are lots and lots of freshmen who came into office last year. So lots of them are thinking about how can I pass legislation that will help give back to my constituents in the district to help position me well in June for potential primaries and then November for the general elections. We did see some increasing partisan posturing as we moved through session. There was also frankly, some friction between the House and the Senate as we moved through session, even amongst members of the same party. So that became something some of us had to navigate as we were seeing bills move through the body. PRTC had initiated legislation this year. That means that that's a legislation that we requested and we worked, we had a Senate version and a House version. The House version was patroned by Delegate Lovejoy in Prince William County and co-patroned by Delegate Dolores Oates, who's in the Front Royal area. Our Senate legislation was patroned by Senator McPike, so thank you to Senator McPike. That's SB 1317. Our House legislation was not successful. It didn't move through the House. Delegate Lovejoy is in a targeted seat for the Democrats in the western part of Prince William County. I believe he got 0 pieces of legislation through this session, and that was something that we anticipated. It's a strategy, you know, when you're looking at re-election. However, Senator McPike was a wonderful patron for our legislation. The legislation is to codify PRTC's current authority to expand service to Front Royal and to Warrenton. That authority was written to the budget last year, the fiscal year 25-26 budget. But because the budget is a special bill and it expires, that would mean that unless this language is codified, our authority expires when the budget expires. So it's really important for us, especially to work this year to get that language codified. So we have the ongoing authority and we know we can continue to plan and budget for those routes moving forward. Those routes launched, I believe, Dr. Schneider, end of December, early January. So there was some early data to show how successful they've been as we worked through the General Assembly. SB 1317 passed unanimously at every stage in the legislative process. And it's currently headed to the governor's desk for a signature, and we're working on communicating with the governor's office to make sure that they understand the purpose of the legislation and encourage his support. We'll see how that ends up. However, if we don't get a governor's signature this year, we do still have the option to come back next year without any disruptions in service. That's not ideal because we'd like to know for the budget, but however, we do have another year to move forward. Dr. Schneider came down to Richmond for 2 days to help with that lobbying effort. So thank you for making the time to come down. Time spent face-to-face with legislators, especially when they're in the General Assembly session. It's always really worthwhile. And it's a great chance to build some relationships and also make sure that they know that we're a resource for them as they have questions. A lot of the work we did this year, again, in a short session with limited legislation, there was not a ton of legislation relating to transit this year. However, there were a couple of bills that we were playing defense on. What we're seeing is sometimes some unanticipated consequences from language that was written very broadly that would potentially like harm PRTC and on the ride. PRTC is a unique animal in Virginia because we're part of Virginia, but we're also a wholly owned subsidiary. So we're just a little bit different than a lot of other bus systems out there. And especially for legislators that aren't from this region or aren't as familiar with the way we operate, they can have well-intentioned legislation, but it can have unintended consequences for us. So a lot of time was spent on defense this session, and thank you to Dr. Schneider and the staff for always chipping in and providing us some great talking points, being very responsive, especially when we needed those quick responses in that 45-day period. We're really making sure this session that legislators know that we're available as a resource. A lot of people here in the room are experts on transit and experts on PRTC. So we want to make sure that they know as they have questions, please come to us. And we keep open lines of communication, and we're available to help shape legislation before it's being drafted and make sure we're minimizing those unanticipated consequences. We also had some really great successes this year just in our coordination efforts. We work very closely with representatives from VRE, from NBTC, from Metro and WMATA. We also work very closely with our Virginia Transit Association, VTA. We work a lot with, I'm sure many of you from Prince William know Devin Cabot, who is government relations professional for Prince William. She and I work very closely together as we need to elevate issues, and she's aware of what could be impacting PRTC. We also have great relationships with VACO and VML and other local, they're like transportation teams in Virginia Association of Counties and Virginia Municipal League. And we have great relationships with other bus agencies. So as we see things that crop up in the General Assembly, or if there's a substitute, there's language we don't like, we all communicate very quickly so we can mobilize and take action, making sure that we're really speaking with a transit voice as necessary. And then individually, we're elevating PRTC and Omni rides impact in the General Assembly. Wrapping up, the General Assembly reconvene session will be April 2nd. That's when the General Assembly will come back to Richmond and take action on any vetoes, any suggested amendments that the governor has placed on bills. The governor has 30 days to take action on legislation, so we're still in that window right now. And one thing that we're going to be following very closely in the interim is the House has convened an emergency committee. It's a very long name, but it's an emergency committee on the impacts of federal workforce and funding cuts. So right now, that's only House committee. I've heard that there might be action on the Senate side as well to make sure we're getting great data about what's happening in the federal government and how it's impacting Virginia. Delegate Josh Thomas serves on that committee, as does Delegate Cole. They had their first meeting on the Saturday of Sine Die. So that was the Saturday, February 22nd. It's the last day of session. They had a meeting that morning, kind of present some initial data and initial findings about what we're seeing, what we're hearing, and what the potential impacts could be for Virginia. Both those delegates elevated this region. Delegate Josh Thomas specifically mentioned impacts to bus ridership and what could be happening in relation to federal cuts. And then Delegate Josh Cole emphasized the need to look beyond kind of the Fairfax County boundaries and look farther south on the I-95 corridor, because there are a lot of people in this region and farther south that he represents that are going to feel the impacts of federal spending cuts. So we're going to be monitoring that very closely and staying in communication with Dr. Schneider about those findings. I think that's going to be one of the hottest topics and hardest rooms to get into in the interim every time those meetings are happening. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions and turn back over to the chair.
I think that I'm very thorough. They're great work to do. So. Any questions, comments? Yes.
I just want to know how we can best support what you're doing and and PRTC.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, Ms. Holmes, we're in regular communication with Dr. Schneider. We text quite a bit during session and hop on the phone, sometimes even more often than we're texting. And then we're submitting weekly reports to him as well with bill trackers and bill lists. I think something that can be very helpful for those that are elected officials is make sure that your General Assembly representatives also know that transit is a priority. So as you have your lobbyists that you're working with in the off session and you're getting reports from them, making sure that they understand how important transit funding is, how important transit support is, how important workforce is, because then that allows us some good groundwork to build our coalition and really be speaking with one voice. You know, if we're going into offices and it's just buses, that's one thing, but if we're going into offices and it's buses and it's the folks that represent you all as localities, that can have a greater impact. So I would make sure you're elevating those priorities to your local government relations teams.
I will just comment real quick because trigger something. We're talking about transportation. We're talking about on-ride and buses, PRTC, but I know Metro has a huge issue going on, and they're going to be even, I won't say even because this is our business and it's impacted. They're going to be impacted as well. And it seems that Metro has a priority, probably not even seeing it very obvious. There's a higher priority in Metro over bus and Omniride and PRTC. And I'm curious, I'd be curious, I guess, to keep an eye on that conversation. How bad does that get to where they want to try to bail out and fund or figure out what that new system looks like and how that helps us out on the bus side of the business. So just a target, a spotlight. Yes.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'll say also I'm regularly attending DMV Moves meetings and MVTC meetings. Often see Dr. Schneider there as well in the room, but I think that's a great point. You know, WMATA and Metro, their biggest service is buses. People see them in subway, but their biggest service is buses. And that's critically important to the region. However, our services are very important too. So we've been keeping a close eye on making sure that even initial conversations that are talking about prioritizing WMATA and you know, not elevating our other bus systems, that our voices in the room and we're not letting those trains of thought get, forgive the pun, but those trains of thought get too far down the tracks. Because we want to stem that and make sure people know that our services are really critical. And frankly, you know, having one mega system for the region means it's not going to be as responsive. So we're making sure people really understand the critical and unique services that we provide.
So that's thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. So that actually tees up what exactly was asked. Has there been any indication from the GNP who spoke to the NBTC on any posture or any data collection that they're beginning to do, especially as the General Assembly begins to look at it from their side as well?
Yes, I mean, I can say that the data that we're seeing in those meetings, frankly, it paints a kind of a dire picture for Metro. It's a big system. It doesn't have a dedicated federal funding stream. It's an expensive proposition to operate a subway system, right? Operate a subway system that's really built up in the 60s and 70s. So whether it comes to maintenance or even increasing service, it's a daunting task to try to get it where people would like to be, or just keep it operational at current levels. You know, it's kind of the big elephant in the room, but we're also making sure that people know that that can't come at the expense of what's happening in other bus systems. And frankly, there are a lot of independent bus systems in the Northern Virginia area, and we, especially through NBTC, are able to kind of speak together and make sure we're working as a coalition. But there are other bus systems throughout Virginia, you know, GRTC in Richmond, HRT in Hampton Roads, even places like Harrisonburg, right? Like, we want to make sure that transit has a voice in it. It's not just all looking, even though there's a big problem to solve with WMATA and Metro funding, it's not coming at the expense of our systems.
And you hit the reason why I asked about that, because the other variable we don't know is, say, because of what you just talked about, we start to see some of the sliding back of Metro services. That has implications on us, obviously, because we have a bunch of folks that take Metro Express and other things to Metro stops. Well, suddenly, if that's not reliable, they will then want to shift their behavior to other routes that we have going directly into DC to try to make up for the fact that suddenly their reliable Metro trip is no longer reliable. So I think we need to start to think about that too, as part of the ecosystem, because on one hand, we have the dilemma where we don't want to be the redheaded stepchildren saying after everyone else gets there, especially in WMATA, that we have the red next, but because that is also the case, and because we know it's going to take a lot of resources to keep WMATA afloat, resources that we don't know where that's going to come from now. We know that will shift rider behavior, knowing that as soon as Metro stops being reliable, even just for a couple of days, people will begin to talk and people begin to change their behavior, and that unfortunately falls on us, as for our constituents.
Mr. Chairman, Laura did a great job. So Bob, thank you also for being down there to testify. On the reconvene, I mean, we're likely to be in special session based on economic forecasting. All of you that are going through budget presentations probably have some level of caution in them. But I can tell you the budget that we passed 10 days ago is probably not worth the paper it's printed on, based on the economic impacts. And so we are likely to be in special session. So there is no budget surplus in reality. Based on the behind the scenes domino effect that's already occurring, the federal contract workforce, not mentioned the federal employee workforce. And so is the unpredictability of policy back and forth that's happening in Washington right now, not to mention budget reconciliation and like the shutdown. And so the level of unpredictability it's very difficult to budget, as in you all work to adopt your local budgets as well. So a good amount of continued reserve things and ways to trigger and stop or slow down spending. The biggest impact is obviously impacts of Medicaid, but if the triggers go away, and the 7,000 Virginians that don't have access to healthcare, it's a large impact to the health systems. Just the main ones. So stay tuned. That's outside of the education funding that I know special ed has already been impacted, that's been slashed already in Spotsylvania, saw that in many of the localities, so there's already a time impacts across the to well, that, you know, thank you.
Potatoes from this, this will be shorter than everyone else.
Chair Bagley, commissioners. I guess I want to start by thanking PRTC as well as corporate support that's in town. It's a lot of different moving parts. For example, the event carried some good news in a milestone in terms of reaching ratification of labor agreements for conference. Historically been understaffed about talked about recruitment retention is the #1 challenge. So just want to say thank you. Super helpful to keep wheels rolling, even while we're dealing with it. So I'll go into this report from there. With February, we're still doing really good with missed trips. Although we had a rough January with the inclement weather. We had some falls, like more and provide reliable service. Again, my shop guys, I know that they are on the call, so I just want to make sure I reiterate these have been doing well. We were above target in February for vehicle reliability, and also above target for miles of service. So with that said, I'll move forward for any questions.
Okay, any questions, Charlotte? Hearing none, thank you, sir. Thank you.
A reference the industry article. Brevity will turn in questions.
So, okay, there will be a test on the industry articles next month. Please read it. We do have one action item, and that is to authorize the executive director to execute a contract to purchase replacement cycle buses to support the commuter bus fleet.
Before we get into the motion, can I ask a question?
Yes.
With everything going on with the freeze on certain federal grants and then coming unfrozen, are we impacted at all by kind of what we're hearing with some of these federal grant discussions?
Us, no, from the standpoint of these are obligated grant funds. What you basically seen is
discretionary.
yes, and what we've seen is the NOFOs, which is a notice of funding opportunities, have just stopped. So this is where this time of year we might see, hey, there's this program funded by Congress. This would now be the cycle of which this is the notice of funding opportunity for X, Y, and Z. Nothing has come out of that. So that's what, but they're honoring the existing items. This is one of the concerns we immediately had. So we're in decent shape, and trying to remember for this item, are these commuter choice vehicles or are these partially federally grant funded for the buses? You recall off the top of your head? These are federal state funds. Okay, these do have federal participation, but we've had no issues with drawdown. Matter of fact, Phil did a drawdown immediately after the antics began.
On that note.
Yep, happy to move that.
Okay. Who was that second? Okay. Okay, I don't think you got a second there yet, though. Yeah. All right. Got a motion, Commissioner Franklin. Okay, got a second, Commissioner Moore. All those in favor? We in discussion. Sorry, I take that back.
Just very quickly, so obviously I've been very vocal about supporting the need to continue to replace our older fleet as a commuter. You know, one of the challenges I've seen over the past really decade are a number of our older fleets on the side of the road. And so the need for this is incredibly important, and you've answered this before, but I'm not sure where we are in completing that life cycle. But anyway, I say that to say, you know, we should continue to support replacing the fleet.
Hearing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? Any, Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Thank you, ma'am.
You know what? Y'all sitting on both sides there, doing a good job. Cause I'm helping Victor out.
You keep pointing me out. Get the voice in the sky. Yes. All right, well, we're just on the chairman's sign and then we're sign. I don't have much, but I would just simply say the discussion of what we discussed, the budget, I think is critically important. And we're in another uncertain time. So this is nothing like COVID, but in a household, it is everything like COVID because it changes the narrative of jobs, and that really changes the mission of what we do here with our transportation system. So there's a lot to pay attention to. There's a lot in our budget cycle that we're discussing right now that we need to have all of those open discussions. And if you have any questions, you've got a great team here that can get you the information, data that you need to help go back to your jurisdictions and have those tough conversations. I know we're having them right now. We're going to continue to have them. We're going to get something going that makes sense and keeps us going. As Laura said, I love that fun. It was cool about the train and keeping it on track. That's what we're going to do. So, you know, so that's all I have to just thanks for another great meeting. We'll start with you. Well, we're going to start. Any comments? No. Okay, we'll come back to that.
I'll just do everything you said.
Let's celebrate our women. Women in history month.
You got it. He's right.
I'll second
What he said, remain steadfast in the I think it was great to see PRTC at the Prince William Chamber of Commerce event, intricately involved in that event. So it's great to see.
Come on. Yes, it's up.
Let us just continue to keep all those that are challenges. Anyone has questions?
So Chair, I did want to know. We opened the VA clinic last Friday. We opened for business on this past Monday. What a great addition to the Fredericksburg region.
And Dr.
County.
Do you have any doctor data?
We do have it.
Some of the VA.
But a VA. But it's not, it's we do have doctors there. I mean, I was, yeah, we do have doctors there, but not fully staffed. The cuts have affected being able to fully staff the VA clinic. So we're, I think Senator Warner and Senator King pushing on that for us to bring some of the veterans back to work. And just a great appreciation for them. So. Thank you.
I want to thank Dr. Snyder and the team for being responsive. That happened to see that fire on the bus, so it was quite alarming, but I'm so glad no one was hurt and everyone was responsive to questions and concerns. So, and POs too, thanks.
Sure, it's good to get feedback from Richmond. Missing the first week is no water and shutting down, back with everything, so it made much longer nights, days, so it's gonna be done. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to ask any jurisdiction if they have any data that they could share in terms of the federal government employees, they have a number. Looking, we don't have an economist on site, but we have a lot of individuals that have that background. But if you have that data to share, that would be so valuable, because we're trying to quantify that when we're talking about workforce. We have 20 million, going on $23 million that is leaving towards disability veterans, that some of them working and but that impacts us, especially when we don't have 100% COCA. We only have 25% COCA. So we are, losing left and right. So knowing how many individuals are impacted, that is revenue, some of our revenue stream that we need to try to see it, mitigate the risk. So if anybody has anything for us, that would be great, because I know you're trying to reach data.
I would encourage you to contact the Northern Virginia Regional Commission. They do a bunch of data on this. They only go as far south as Pennsylvania County for their normal distribution. It's only for federal jobs. It's not going to cover independent contractors. Basically, they do the zip code distribution out of OPM. But they've got contact them, and they may be able to give you a better breakdown.
Okay.
Northern Virginia Regional.
Part of this map.
Yeah, the flyer and all that kind of stuff. They've got some good.
Oh, thanks. Here's Alan.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say I appreciate the conversation that was spearheaded by Senator McPike and subsequently followed by our commissioners about the funding and the nuance between how do we eventually get this off state money to expand routes. And I think the request by, I'm not sure, I can't remember which commissioner asked for that, but I would greatly appreciate if when we're getting the budgets, if you haven't already submitted over, if you've done it, then I appreciate it. If you've not, to probably make that nuance a little bit. Because sometimes when the rest of our boards, to the south especially, see those numbers, they're not always acutely aware of what that data means. And we can do our best to explain it to them, but sometimes seeing it alongside in that budget does a long way of helping to try to bridge that gap that Commissioner Franklin has been harping on, of us trying to get, funding in the coming years to support our system. And so I really enjoyed that discussion, and hopefully we can have some fruitful solutions coming out of that.
Commissioners, in keeping with tradition, we have our newest employee, Jerry, here, who's going to take the floor to talk to us now. I do want to say Jerry Lloyd, right? Jerry Lloyd, grant writer. She's a grant writer. And Grant, did I get that right? Grant writer? Specialist, Grant. And so welcome to the family, to the team. This is your first week, you said. Second week and first meeting with PRTC. So I just want to give you a shout out there. Okay. All right. So all right, and with that, commissioners, at 8:30, we are officially adjourned. Good job. Come on, Maddie.